Welcome back, guys, to our program. Listen, copper gold production in Saudi Arabia is not exactly where most mining investors may be looking, but that is part of the story with Royal Road Minerals, who's also drilling in Colombia and Morocco. CEO Tim Coughlin is here with us to discuss. Tim, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Well, like just mentioned, you're running projects in 3 jurisdictions, but we'll be focusing on just 2 of them here in our chat today. What's your current priority and rationalization of your gold and copper assets in Colombia and Saudi Arabia?
Current priority is very clearly in Colombia. We discovered a porphyry there in 2021 underneath some well-known gold veins. The porphyry sits underneath them. And then we sort of suspended operations whilst the Colombian government went through a process of reconsidering its mining legislation. In the end, not a lot changed, and we're back. And so we intend to be drilling there very early next year, hopefully mid-January. There's some spectacular intersections, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later on, but that's a principal focus. Saudi Arabia is a very early stage jurisdiction, probably understandably. I think probably most of your viewers would, without having to go into detail, would probably sort of innately understand that. And so what we're doing there is defining some gold targets on some sort of high-grade vein structures in a project we have in the south of the country, and we'll be drilling them in December.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's break this down. First, Colombia focus. You've already drilled over 300 meters of mineralization in some holes. You just mentioned there'll be more drilling ahead. What are we actually looking at here?
So what we're looking at is the early stages of what we think is going to be a super exciting copper, gold, silver discovery. So it's a porphyry body. So that's a body that is, they're usually large, and what we can see is over 6 square kilometers of alteration on the surface. And they host veins of variably grading gold, copper, and silver. One of the things we do like about this project specifically is it's not homogeneously mineralized. It's more like a fruit cake, and so there's some nice high-grade pieces in there, which include sort of 60 meters at a couple of grams gold and 0.6% copper and half an ounce of silver, etc. Within a broader, as you quite rightly mentioned, broader intersections of 300 meters at either a gram or a percent of copper. Yeah, so what we'll be doing is extending those initial 3 or 4 discovery holes into the porphyry.
And at what point do you go from drilling to defining a resource? Is that on the table right now?
Oh, I think we can see already the resource drilling program ahead of us, if that makes any sense. What I mean by that is we can see the space, we can see where the next, not just the next one, but the next 3 or 4 drill holes need to go in order to define these things. I suppose we're drilling in the middle of the porphyry. What we need to do is define the edges, so there'll be a sort of slow step out process as we define those edges. And it's only just one of the reasons it wasn't really discovered prior to our drilling is it only just outcrops on surface in the bottom of a steep valley, a steep quebrada. And so all we know is the top of the thing at the moment, and we have no idea how deep it goes. 50% of our drill holes ended in grade.
Well, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, there are investors who may not know this yet, but the government is pushing Vision 2030, which basically in very high level words means that they're diversifying away from oil, and it includes mining. What does that translate into for you on the ground in a concrete way?
In a concrete way, so practically, by the way, so mining is a very important component of that transition. They call it pillar 3 of the transition away from such a high reliance in respect of GDP on petroleum products. But what it means practically is a series of things. First of all, the Saudi Arabian government established a system wherein anybody can access geophysical information, so high quality airborne magnetics and radiometrics, up to, I think I've got this number right, about 45,000 stream sediment samples, geological maps, mineral occurrences, all on a publicly available data set. That's kind of step 1. They completed that some time ago. Step two is that they will also reimburse explorers up to $2 million per license for the first 5 years of your exploration. So that's a significant sort of leg up. And then, importantly, and I don't hear this mentioned perhaps quite often enough, but they will lend up to 75% of your initial capex, capped at $800 million when you go to building your mine. When you go to build your mine, so probably peerless in terms of those initiatives.
Well, in your latest batch of news releases, there were some early stage results out of your project in Saudi Arabia. It's called Jabal Sahabiyah. What did you learn? What's the follow up here?
Yeah, so the quick answer to that is we learned that there's some significant sort of gold veins and sheeted gold vein zones that we need to drill or keep drilling. I always like to explain this. Almost the process of exploration starts with defining dots, then joining dots with lines, joining lines into surfaces, and joining surfaces into volumes, which are obviously ore bodies. And so this first drilling program, what we would call a scout drilling program, really was defining dots. And so what we identified was some what we call skarn style mineralization, which is base metals plus silver and gold. And then also some pure gold veins, gold and silver actually, veins that we only really got onto towards the end of the drilling program. So we're taking the rig back in December to start drilling out some of those. They're extensive veins. It's difficult to know how extensive they are because the rocks are folded, and so they disappear under surface and then come back up again. And that's a bit of work that we're trying to resolve so technically on the ground at the moment. But we'll be drilling those in December.
Well, in the beginning of November, there was an announcement of a raise, $5 million at 18 cents a share. Can you talk to us about what you're spending that on, and also why now? Why go through this financing obstacle at this point?
Yeah, I think it's a very small financing in a market that's probably more accustomed to larger financings, that many of which have been thankfully oversubscribed. But what we want to do is, be disciplined about our capital structure. What I think we need to do is demonstrate, because we suspended our work for so long in Colombia, whilst the government resolves its internal issues in relation to the mining sector. We need to bring Guinta back to the surface, Guinta being the porphyry project in Colombia, back to the surface and implement pretty much what you might call a restart or reset or whatever you want to call it. So the idea of this small raise is to get the drills going principally in Colombia again. Of course, get the drilling going in Saudi Arabia, although we do share that, as that's a 50-50 joint venture with our Saudi partner. And then, restart the company and see where we are at the end of Q1.
Quick follow-up, there is a strategic shareholder now. Can you talk to us about who that is and what it could potentially signal for where your company is headed?
Yeah, that's Rio 2. So they own, probably most of your viewers will be familiar with that name, but they're building the Phoenix Gold Mine in Chile. It's run by Andrew Cox and Alex Black, and two very, very dynamic individuals who I think will also be familiar to most of your audience. I guess they view this as a bit of optionality with us. I know they're particularly interested in Colombia and what we can turn up there. Also interested in Saudi Arabia, I think, because of its permitting mining potential. It should move pretty quickly. And we're very, very happy to have them along. They're very, very energetic, involved, great shareholder.
Now, before you go, I want to kind of ask you what we should kind of look out for in the next 6 months. What is one thing you want us to remember when it comes to Royal Road and the work you're doing here in Colombia and Saudi Arabia?
I think, one thing to remember is Royal Road is pressing the restart button. We've been in the wilderness. We haven't done a financing since 2020. I think that's important to know. And we're relaunching a discovery of a porphyry that, the story started. Chapter 1 was written in 2021, and it's taken us that long to get around to chapter 2.
Well, listen, thank you for being here. For our viewers, you can go to CEO.CA and just search RYR to go to the company's direct message board where other investors are sharing, talking about what they think about what's behind the story. Thanks for watching.